The grand chandelier cast a golden glow over the lavish living room, illuminating the tension that hung thick in the air. The heavy silence was only broken by the faint ticking of an antique clock and the quiet, muffled sobs of Vanessa. Eleanor sat stiffly on the velvet couch, her fingers clutching the fabric of her dress, her heart pounding in her chest. Across from her, her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Sinclair, stood with their arms crossed, their expressions unreadable. Vanessa, the perfect daughter, the one who had always been loved, the one who had everything, was now dramatically wiping away tears with a silk handkerchief. "I can't do it!" Vanessa cried, shaking her head. "I just can't!" Eleanor's brows furrowed. "Do what?" she asked cautiously, though she already had a sinking feeling in her stomach. Her mother exhaled sharply. "Your sister cannot marry Liam Harrington in his condition," she said, her voice clipped and impatient. Eleanor's body went rigid. Liam Harrington, the millionaire businessman, the perfect fiancé Vanessa had been set to marry. He had been involved in a tragic accident 2 months ago. Now he lay in a hospital bed in a coma, unresponsive. "Wait!" Eleanor's voice came out shaky. "Do you mean the wedding is still happening?" Her father scoffed. "Of course it's happening. Do you have any idea how much money is at stake?" Eleanor's heart pounded harder. "But Vanessa doesn't have to go through with it," her mother continued, "because you will." The words hit her like a slap. Eleanor shot to her feet. "What? No, that's insane!" Vanessa dramatically sobbed louder. "Don't you understand, Eleanor? I can't marry a man who might never wake up. I'm only 24. My whole life would be ruined." Eleanor turned to her parents in disbelief. "And you think I should?" Her father's jaw tightened. "It's not about what we think, Eleanor. It's about survival. The Harrington family is powerful. This marriage is the only thing keeping them from pulling out of our business deal. If they do, we will lose everything." Her mother's cold eyes met hers. "You wouldn't want to ruin your family, would you?" Eleanor's throat tightened. "This isn't fair." Vanessa sniffled, adjusting the diamond bracelet on her wrist. "Life isn't fair, sweetheart. But at least this way, you'd be useful for once." Eleanor felt the sting of her sister's words. She had always been the forgotten daughter, the one who lived in Vanessa's shadow, the one never good enough. And now, they wanted to throw her away like a pawn. She wanted to scream, to refuse, to run, but she knew better. Her father wasn't bluffing. She had seen the financial reports. The Sinclair family was drowning in debt. Their company was barely surviving, and if the Harringtons backed out, it would be the end. She swallowed hard. "If I do this," she said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper, "what happens to me after?" Her mother's lips curled into a small, satisfied smile. "You will be Mrs. Harrington. You will live comfortably for the rest of your life. But what if he never wakes up?" Her father waved a dismissive hand. "Then you live as a widow in a few years and no one will question it." Eleanor clenched her fists. This was her life. They were deciding her future, and she had no choice. "Fine," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'll do it." The Sinclair estate was decorated like a fairy tale, white roses, cascading chandeliers, golden embellishments. Guests whispered as they took their seats, confusion evident on their faces. Everyone knew Liam Harrington was in a coma, yet the wedding was happening. Eleanor stood at the altar, dressed in an elegant, yet cold, white gown. Her hands trembled as she held her bouquet, her stomach in knots. Instead of a groom standing beside her, there was a nurse, ready to sign the marriage documents as Liam's medical representative. The officiant's voice echoed through the grand hall. Do you, Eleanor Sinclair, take Liam Harrington to be your lawfully wedded husband? Her breath hitched. She turned slightly, glancing at Vanessa, who sat in the front row, completely unbothered, her attention already shifting to a handsome man beside her, a new lover, no doubt. This wasn't supposed to be her life. And yet, she forced herself to speak. I do, the officiant nodded. With the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. The words felt hollow. There was no kiss, no celebration, just the sound of a pen scratching against the marriage certificate as Eleanor signed her name, binding herself to a man who wasn't even awake. And as she looked down at the paper at the name Eleanor Harrington, a single tear slipped down her cheek. This wasn't a wedding. It was a sentence, a life she never chose, a marriage to a ghost. The Harrington estate was breathtaking, an architectural masterpiece of towering marble pillars, sprawling gardens, and a view that stretched over the city skyline. It was a place of wealth, power, and prestige. And yet, to Eleanor, it felt cold. As she stepped into the grand foyer on her first day as Mrs. Harrington, she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. The staff lined up to greet her, their faces unreadable. Some murmured polite greetings, but others exchanged knowing glances, whispers trailing behind them. Look at her, marrying a man in a coma just for his fortune. She's nothing but an opportunist. She won't last here. Eleanor ignored them. She wasn't here for money. She was here because she had no choice. And if she was going to survive in this world, she needed to prove that she was more than just a woman who had married a millionaire on his deathbed. Liam's bedroom was enormous, too big, too empty, too silent. The only sound was the soft beep of the machines monitoring his condition. Eleanor stood by his bedside, looking at the man who was now legally her husband. He was handsome, even in sleep. Dark hair, sharp jawline, broad shoulders. But there was something heartbreaking about seeing him like this, trapped in a world between life and death. She slowly reached out, hesitating before gently placing her hand over his. His skin was warm, but unresponsive. I don't know if you can hear me, she whispered, but I'm Eleanor, your wife. The word felt foreign. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to continue. I don't belong here, and I'm sure if you were awake, you wouldn't want me here either. But until you wake up, I'll take care of you. And she meant it. Despite the circumstances, she wouldn't abandon him. So every morning she sat by his bedside, reading to him from the books on his shelves. She adjusted his pillows, made sure his nurses followed the correct routines, and even brought fresh flowers into his room to make it feel less lifeless. Slowly, the whispers in the mansion began to change. She actually takes care of him. I thought she was just waiting for him to die. Maybe she's not as heartless as we thought. One evening, while searching for a book in the mansion's vast library, Eleanor stumbled upon a locked drawer in Liam's study. Curiosity gnawed at her. She looked around, making sure no one was watching, before carefully picking the lock with a hairpin. The drawer slid open with a soft click, revealing a folder filled with documents and photos. Her breath hitched as she pulled them out. It was a report on Liam's accident, but something was off. The official record said it had been a car crash, an unfortunate tragedy. But these documents suggested otherwise. The brakes on Liam's car had been tampered with. Someone had wanted him dead. Eleanor's grip tightened on the papers, her heart racing. This wasn't just an accident. This was an attempted murder. And the worst part? The suspect list was short. Because the only people who had access to Liam's car were his closest family and friends. And that meant someone in this very house wanted him gone. The rain tapped gently against the windows of Liam's bedroom, filling the silence with a rhythmic, almost comforting sound. The soft glow of the bedside lamp cast warm light over the room where Eleanor sat, curled up in a chair beside Liam's bed, reading aloud. It had become a routine. Every evening she would sit there reading to him as if her voice could somehow reach into the void where he was trapped. Tonight, she was reading The Great Gatsby, one of the books she had found on his bookshelf. So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. She sighed, closing the book. "I wonder if you ever liked this story," she murmured, glancing at Liam's still face. His breathing was steady, unchanged. His dark lashes rested against his skin, his features frozen in an expression of deep sleep. Eleanor reached for the glass of water on the nightstand, but as she did, something caught her eye. Her breath stalled. His finger moved. It was just a small twitch, barely noticeable. She blinked, her heart pounding. Had she imagined it? Holding her breath, she leaned in, watching intently. Nothing. Silence. Maybe it had been a trick of the light. Maybe she was so desperate for change that she was seeing things. Shaking her head, she exhaled and stood up. "Good night, Liam," she whispered, brushing her fingers lightly over his hand before leaving the room. But what she didn't see was his finger twitch again. The next day, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that what she had seen was real. And by nightfall, she got her answer. As she sat beside him again, reading in the dim glow of the lamp, she noticed it, his hand moving ever so slightly. Then, the next morning, as she adjusted his blanket, his eyelids fluttered for a fraction of a second. It was happening. Something was changing. She immediately called the doctor. Dr. Whitmore, Liam's personal physician, arrived within the hour, his expression unreadable as he checked Liam's vitals, tested his reflexes, and examined his condition. Eleanor stood by anxiously, her hands clasped tightly together. After what felt like an eternity, Dr. Whitmore straightened and turned to her. "You were right," he said. "His neurological activity is increasing. His body is responding." Eleanor's heart leaped. "So, does that mean he'll wake up?" The doctor nodded. "It's impossible to say exactly when, but yes, he's improving. He could regain consciousness at any time now." Eleanor felt relief flood through her, but her relief was short-lived, because news of Liam's possible recovery didn't stay quiet for long. And when Vanessa heard about it, she came running back. It started with a phone call. Eleanor was in Liam's room adjusting the fresh flowers by his bed when her phone buzzed. She frowned at the name flashing on the screen. Vanessa Sinclair. Hesitantly, she answered. "Hello, Eleanor." Vanessa's voice was unnaturally cheerful. "I just heard the most wonderful news. Liam might wake up soon." Eleanor's fingers tightened around the phone. "How did you—" "Oh, don't be silly, darling. News like this spreads, and as his fiancé I had to call." Eleanor's stomach twisted. "Fiancé?" As if she had any right to still claim that title. "He's my husband now, Vanessa," she said, her voice firm. Vanessa laughed lightly. "Oh, sweetie, let's not get caught up in technicalities. We both know the only reason you married him was because you had no choice. But now that he's waking up..." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying don't get too comfortable," Vanessa purred. "Because once Liam wakes up and sees who should really be by his side, this little fairy tale of yours will be over." The line went dead. Eleanor slowly lowered the phone, her heart racing. She had fought to protect Liam when he was unconscious, but now she would have to fight even harder. Harder. because Vanessa was coming back, and she would do anything to reclaim what she thought was hers. Eleanor stirred at the faint sound of shifting sheets. She had fallen asleep in the chair next to Liam's bed, as she had done every night since their strange, unwanted marriage. The room was still bathed in the soft hues of early morning light, the air thick with the scent of fresh flowers and the faint, sterile aroma of antiseptic. For a moment she thought she had imagined the sound, and then, "Eleanor?" The voice was rough, hoarse from months of silence, but undeniably real. Eleanor's eyes flew open, her breath catching in her throat. Liam was awake. His deep blue eyes, once so lifeless, were open, staring directly at her. Eleanor's heart pounded. "You!" she whispered, scrambling to her feet. "You're awake!" Liam frowned, his gaze flickering with confusion as he scanned the unfamiliar room. His body tensed beneath the covers, his eyes locked back onto hers. "Who are you?" Eleanor froze. The joy, the relief she had felt moments ago evaporated. He didn't know her. "Liam," she said cautiously, stepping closer, her voice gentle. "It's me. I'm Eleanor." His frown deepened, his jaw tightening. "I don't know you." The words were like a knife to her chest. "Liam," she tried again, her voice shaking slightly. "You've been in a coma for months. Do you remember what happened?" Liam hesitated, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for something familiar. Finally, he shook his head, his frustration evident. "No," he muttered. "I don't remember anything." Eleanor's stomach twisted. This wasn't just disorientation. He had lost his memory. And that meant he didn't remember her. Didn't remember their marriage. Didn't remember who he could trust. The doctors came in soon after, confirming what Eleanor already feared. Liam had suffered retrograde amnesia. His long-term memory was damaged, and while he could remember basic knowledge and skills, his personal life was a complete blank. He didn't recognize the house, staff, his own reflection in the mirror, or the ring on his finger. And worst of all, he didn't recognize her. Eleanor sat silently in the corner of the room as the doctor explained everything to Liam in careful, clinical terms. Liam barely reacted, his face stoic, unreadable. But Eleanor could see the tension in his posture, the way his hands clenched beneath the blankets. He was processing it, trying to make sense of the void where his past should have been. But before anyone could say more, the door burst open. "Liam!" The sharp, honeyed voice made Eleanor's blood run cold. She turned just in time to see Vanessa rushing toward the bed, tears glistening in her eyes, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor. Eleanor barely had time to react before Vanessa threw herself at Liam, her arms wrapping around him in a dramatic embrace. "Liam, oh my God, I was so worried," she sobbed into his shoulder. "I thought I lost you forever." Liam tensed under the sudden contact, blinking in confusion. His arms remained stiff at his sides. I don't..." Vanessa pulled back just enough to cup his face in her hands, her fake concern shining in her eyes. "It's okay," she cooed. "The doctor said you don't remember. But I'm here now." Eleanor felt sick. Liam's brow furrowed. "Who are you?" Vanessa gasped, clutching her chest as if he had just stabbed her through the heart. "Liam, don't say that," she whimpered. "It's me, Vanessa." Eleanor gritted her teeth. Vanessa was lying, but Liam didn't know that. And right now, he had no reason not to believe her. The room filled with Liam's family soon after. His parents, his closest relatives, all speaking over one another, showering him with affection, relief, and subtle reminders of their status in his life. And yet, not one of them acknowledged Eleanor. She stood there a silent observer, completely ignored, as if she was nothing more than a nurse or a stranger who happened to be in the room. It wasn't until Liam's mother, Margaret Harrington, turned to face her that someone even acknowledged her presence. And it wasn't kindness in her tone. "It's good of you to have stayed with Liam through all this," Margaret said, her gaze sharp, assessing. "But now that he's awake, we won't need you anymore." The implication was clear. Eleanor wasn't part of this family. She wasn't important. She wasn't his wife in their eyes. Eleanor swallowed the lump in her throat. "I am his wife," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "That hasn't changed." Margaret's lips curled into a small, dismissive smile. "We'll see about that," she murmured before turning her attention back to her son. Later that night, as Liam sat in his bed, processing everything, Vanessa sat beside him, stroking his hand gently. "Liam," she whispered, "I know all of this is confusing, but just trust me, okay?" He hesitated. Vanessa leaned in, her voice dropping to a soft, manipulative murmur. "I've always been by your side," she continued. "I was your fiancé before the accident, and I've been waiting for you ever since." Eleanor, who stood by the doorway, clenched her fists. Liar. Vanessa had abandoned him the moment she thought he was useless to her, and now she wanted to claim him again, now that he was awake, wealthy, and powerful once more. Eleanor knew she should walk away. She had done her part. She could leave. But then she glanced at Liam, at the confusion, the uncertainty flickering in his stormy blue eyes. She had seen him through his worst, cared for him when no one else had. And now, when he was awake, when he needed the truth the most, she couldn't just leave him in the hands of a liar. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward. "Liam," she said firmly. Both he and Vanessa turned to face her. Eleanor met his gaze, strong, unwavering. "I am your wife," she said, "and whether you remember me or not, I'm not leaving you." Vanessa's smile stiffened, but Eleanor didn't care, because for the first time since this entire nightmare began, she was going to fight. Vanessa was relentless. From the moment Liam woke up, she made it her mission to erase Eleanor from his life. Every morning she arrived at the Harrington estate, dressed in flawless designer outfits, her perfume filling the air as she flounced into Liam's room with a dazzling smile. She sat by his bedside, holding his hand, whispering to him about their perfect past. "Liam, we were so in love," she would sigh, her fingers grazing his wrist. "Do you really not remember our trips to Paris? The way you used to hold me and say you couldn't imagine life without me?" Liam frowned, his brows furrowing in frustration. "I don't remember." Vanessa's expression fell, but only for a second. She quickly replaced it with a look of gentle patience, tilting her head as she stroked his arm. "It's okay," she said sweetly. "We have all the time in the world to get back to what we had." Eleanor, standing by the door, felt sick. Every word. Out of Vanessa's mouth was a lie. Liam had never been that affectionate with her. Their relationship had been more of a business arrangement than a love story. But now, with his mind wiped clean, Vanessa was weaving a new narrative, one that suited her. And the worst part? Liam had no reason not to believe her. Eleanor, despite everything, refused to abandon him. She didn't push, she didn't demand. Instead, she stayed. She helped him through the long, frustrating days of physical therapy, standing beside him as he struggled to regain his strength. She read to him, her voice steady and calm, bringing pieces of the world to him when he couldn't yet step outside. And at night, when the house was quiet and the weight of his missing memories became too much, she simply sat with him, offering her silent presence as comfort. One evening, as she placed a warm towel on his arm after a long session of stretching, Liam suddenly spoke. "You don't talk much about the past," he murmured, watching her carefully. Eleanor stilled. "Ah." She met his gaze, unsure of how much she should say. Finally, she exhaled. "I don't think the past is what matters," she said softly. "What matters is who you are now, and where you go from here." Liam studied her, something unreadable in his expression, and then, to her surprise, he smiled. A small, genuine smile, the first she had seen since he woke up. Days turned into weeks, and something shifted between them. Liam started looking for her when she wasn't in the room. He asked about her day. He noticed the little things, how she always tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, how she hummed softly when she read, how her hands trembled when she was upset, but she always held herself together. One evening, as she helped him into bed, he caught her wrist before she could step away. "Stay," he murmured, his voice hoarse. Eleanor hesitated. "Liam, I don't know why," he admitted, looking into her eyes, searching for something he didn't understand. "But when you're here, it doesn't feel so empty." Eleanor's breath hitched, because even if he didn't remember their past, his heart was starting to recognize her anyway. And that meant that Vanessa was losing, and she knew it. The moment Vanessa noticed Liam starting to gravitate toward Eleanor, her sweetness crumbled. One morning, as Eleanor was helping Liam adjust his cane, Vanessa stormed in, her face twisted with anger. "This has gone on long enough," she snapped. "Liam! She's manipulating you!" Liam frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" Vanessa crossed her arms. "You don't remember. So let me tell you. This woman doesn't love you. She was forced into marrying you for money. She didn't even want you." Silence fell over the room. Eleanor's fingers curled into fists, but she didn't defend herself because Liam was looking at her, not with doubt, but with thoughtfulness. After a long pause, he turned back to Vanessa and said, "Then why is she still here?" Vanessa's lips parted in shock. Liam continued, his voice calm but firm. "If she was only here for money, why hasn't she left now that I'm awake?" Vanessa had no answer, because, deep down, she knew Liam was starting to see the truth for himself, and she was losing him all over again. The thought wouldn't leave Eleanor's mind. The accident. Something about it had never felt right. Liam was an experienced driver. The police report had called it an unfortunate crash, blaming it on faulty brakes. But why hadn't the car been recalled? Why hadn't Liam's team, who regularly maintained his vehicles, noticed anything wrong before? And most importantly, who had benefited the most from his coma? The more she thought about it, the more one name kept coming back to her: Vanessa. And deep down, Eleanor knew this wasn't just an accident. Someone had wanted Liam dead, and it was time to find out who. Eleanor started digging. Late at night, when the house was quiet, she searched through old security footage, accident reports, and financial records. And then she found it. A suspicious transaction made just days before Liam's accident. A large sum of money had been transferred from an anonymous account to a mechanic's shop, the same shop that had last serviced Liam's car. Her heart raced. She had to go there. The next day she arrived at the small auto shop on the outskirts of town. The place smelled of grease and burning metal, and the man behind the counter barely looked up when she entered. "I need to ask about a car that was serviced here a few months ago," Eleanor said, keeping her voice steady. The man finally looked at her, his eyes narrowing. "What car?" "Liam Harrington's." The man stiffened. For a moment he hesitated. Then he shook his head. I don't know anything about that. Eleanor pulled out her phone, showing him a screenshot of the mysterious payment. Then maybe you can explain this. The man paled. Eleanor stepped closer. Someone paid you to tamper with his brakes, didn't they? His jaw tightened. Look, lady, I don't want any trouble. Tell me who paid you, she pressed, or I go to the police. The mechanic exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. I don't know their name, he muttered. All I know is that a woman came in, blonde, expensive-looking, said she wanted the job done quietly. Eleanor's blood ran cold. There was only one person who fit that description. Vanessa Sinclair. Eleanor returned to the Harrington estate that evening, her mind spinning. Vanessa had tried to kill Liam, and now she was here, pretending to be his loving fiancée, hoping to reclaim him now that he was awake. Eleanor found her in the garden, sipping wine, like she had no care in the world. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, but for Eleanor, the beauty of the evening was overshadowed by the rage building inside her. She marched up to her sister, gripping the evidence in her hand. You did it, didn't you? Eleanor hissed. Vanessa barely spared her a glance. Did what, darling? Eleanor slammed the papers onto the table. You paid someone to sabotage Liam's car! Vanessa's wine glass paused mid-air. For a moment there was silence. Then, slowly, Vanessa set her glass down and leaned back in her chair, a small, amused smile playing on her lips. So, she mused, you finally figured it out. Eleanor's stomach twisted. You're not even going to deny it? Vanessa chuckled, swirling her wine lazily. Why should I? It's not like you can do anything about it. Eleanor's fists clenched. You tried to kill him. Vanessa sighed dramatically. Oh, please. If I wanted him dead, he would be dead. She tilted her head. But a coma? Now, that was useful. It got him out of the way, at least for a while. Eleanor's chest burned with fury. You're a monster! Vanessa smirked. No, darling. I'm a realist. And you? She leaned forward, eyes dark and calculating. You think you can change how this story ends? Eleanor's breath hitched. Face it, Vanessa continued, her voice a silk-covered blade. You were never supposed to be in this world. You were supposed to be nothing, a background character in my story. She took a slow sip of her wine, then whispered, and soon, that's exactly what you'll be. Eleanor's hands shook. Vanessa wasn't just dangerous, she was ruthless. And if she had already tried to kill Liam once, there was nothing stopping her from trying again. Eleanor had one choice. She had to protect him at all costs. The storm raged outside the Harrington estate. Rain hammering against the massive windows, thunder growling in the distance. The flickering glow of the fireplace cast long shadows across the room where Liam sat, staring into the flames, his mind clouded with fragments of something just out of reach. His headaches had been growing worse ever since waking up. There had been moments, flashes of something familiar yet foreign, a voice, a touch, a warmth that made his chest tighten. And tonight, as the storm howled, those fragments finally came together. It started with a sudden piercing pain in his head. He groaned, gripping his temples as his vision blurred. Then, memories flooded back. The road had been wet. The city lights had blurred through the windshield. Then the brakes failed. The wheel had locked. The car spun. And just before the world turned black, he had seen something. Someone standing at a distance. A woman, blonde hair, a sharp, satisfied smile. Vanessa. And then, after the accident, Eleanor. sitting beside his bed, whispering to him in the dark even when she thought he couldn't hear, holding his hand, reading to him, loving him. Liam's eyes snapped open, his breath coming in short gasps. It all made sense now. The accident wasn't an accident. And Eleanor, she had been there always. Thunder cracked outside as Liam pushed himself up, his heart pounding. Vanessa had lied to him, manipulated him. And the woman he had been unknowingly falling for all over again had been his wife all along. He needed to find Eleanor. And Vanessa? She was about to face justice. Downstairs, Vanessa stood in the grand hall, sipping wine, still basking in her victory. Eleanor had confronted her, and what had happened? Nothing. Because power belonged to those who knew how to play the game, and Vanessa had always played it better. But then, Liam's voice sliced through the silence. "Vanessa." She turned, startled. Liam stood at the top of the grand staircase, his eyes locked onto her, sharp and cold. Something about him was different, stronger, clearer. Her fingers tightened around the glass. "Liam, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice sugar-sweet. He took slow steps down the stairs, his jaw clenched, his movements controlled. "I remember everything." Vanessa's blood froze. "I remember the crash. I remember the brakes being tampered with. I remember you watching from a distance as I nearly died." Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. "Liam, you're confused." His eyes darkened. "No, I was confused, but not anymore." He turned to the assembled guests, his family, the estate staff, even his parents who had arrived earlier that evening. And then, with a voice sharp as a blade, he said, "Vanessa tried to kill me." Gasps rippled through the room. Vanessa laughed, but it was strained. "You don't have proof," she said quickly. "Actually, we do." Eleanor stepped forward, holding a folder of evidence. The mechanic's confession, the bank records, the security footage. Vanessa's face twisted in horror. You little—" "Enough." Liam's voice was ice-cold. He looked at her one last time, then turned to his parents. "She is no longer welcome in this house." His father, who had always adored Vanessa, stood in stunned silence, but his mother, Margaret, narrowed her eyes in cold disapproval. "Vanessa," she said, her voice razor-sharp, "you have embarrassed this family for the last time. Leave now." Vanessa's breath stuttered. She turned to Liam, but his expression was steel. There was nothing left for her here. With one last glare at Eleanor, Vanessa stormed out of the estate, disgraced, defeated, and utterly alone. The room was silent as the storm continued to rage outside. Eleanor stood still, watching Vanessa disappear, but her heart was pounding for a different reason now. Liam turned to her. For the first time without hesitation, he reached for her hand. She gasped softly, but he held it tightly, like he was afraid to let go again. "I remember, Eleanor," he murmured, his voice raw. Her eyes filled with uncertainty, with hope, with disbelief. "You do?" His gaze softened. "I remember everything." He exhaled, his grip tightening. "And I remember that I never truly saw you before." Eleanor swallowed hard. "But now I do," he whispered. "I see you. I see the woman who never left my side, the woman who saved me." A shiver ran through her as his fingers brushed her cheek. "And God help me," he murmured, his voice filled with something deeper, something certain. "I love you, Eleanor." Tears spilled down her cheeks, not because she was sad, but because for the first time since this nightmare began, she had finally won his heart. The morning after Vanessa's disgraceful departure, the Harrington estate felt different, lighter, brighter. For the first time in months, there was no tension hanging in the air, no whispers of betrayal, no manipulations lurking behind honeyed words. Vanessa was gone, and in her absence, Eleanor could finally breathe. She stood on the balcony overlooking the vast gardens, bathed in the soft golden light of sunrise. The crisp morning air carried the scent of blooming roses, a symbol of something new, something beautiful, something earned. Behind her, footsteps approached. She turned just as Liam stepped into view. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. No barriers, no confusion, no past wounds hanging between them. Just them. "You're up early," Liam murmured, his voice warm. Eleanor smiled faintly. "Couldn't sleep. Too much to think about." He nodded, stepping closer. "Like what?" She hesitated, then softly she said, "Like what happens next?" Liam's gaze never wavered. "Next?" he echoed. Then, without another word, he reached into his pocket. Eleanor's breath caught as he slowly pulled out a small velvet box. Her heart stilled. "Liam?" He took a deep breath, then in a deliberate, steady motion, he sank down on one knee. Eleanor gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Liam smiled up at her, his blue eyes filled with certainty, devotion, and love. "I know we were already married," he murmured, "but that was never our choice. It was never our moment." His fingers brushed over the ring as he looked at her with everything he felt but had never been able to say before. "This time, I want to do it right," he said softly. "No contracts, no pressure, just me asking the woman I love to be my wife." Eleanor felt tears spill down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from overwhelming joy. She dropped to her knees in front of him, laughing through her tears, and whispered, "Yes." The second wedding was nothing like the first. There were no whispered deals, no reluctant tears, no sense of duty. This time, love was at the heart of it all. The Harrington family, who had once treated Eleanor like an outsider, now welcomed her with open arms. Even Liam's mother, who had once doubted her, pulled her aside before the ceremony and gently squeezed her hands. "I misjudged you," Margaret admitted, her gaze softer than Eleanor had ever seen. "But you saved my son. You stood by him when none of us did. And for that you have my deepest respect." Eleanor blinked back emotion and nodded. "Thank you." Then, at last, it was time. Eleanor stood at the end of the aisle, her heart racing, her hands trembling as she clutched her bouquet. And at the altar, waiting for her, was Liam. This time, he was awake, smiling, waiting for her. As she walked toward him, she felt everything in her life, the pain, the betrayals, the loneliness, fade away. Because this was real. When she reached him, Liam took her hands, his grip firm, steady, unwavering. "You look breathtaking," he whispered. Eleanor smiled through her happy tears. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with warmth, filled with the love they had fought for. And when Liam leaned in, pressing his forehead against hers before finally capturing her lips in a tender, soul-deep kiss, the entire world seemed to fall away. This was the beginning of their true forever. That night, after the reception, Liam and Eleanor stood together under the stars, the quiet hum of the estate settling around them. Liam reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "You changed my life, Eleanor," he murmured. "You saved me in ways I can never repay." Eleanor smiled, leaning into him. "You don't have to repay me," she whispered. "Just stay with me." Liam exhaled, his grip tightening. "Always." Then softly he whispered the words that made her heart melt. "Thank you for never giving up on me. And as they stood there, wrapped in love, wrapped in the future they had chosen together, Eleanor knew she was finally home. As Liam and Eleanor embraced under the stars, their journey proved a powerful truth. Real love is not about how a story begins, but how two hearts fight to stay together. Eleanor, once the forgotten girl, became the woman cherished and adored. Liam, once lost in darkness, found his light in her unwavering love. And Vanessa? She learned that lies and betrayal will always lead to downfall, because in the end, kindness, loyalty, and true love will always triumph. Their tale stands as a testament to how love, when true, will always find its way back.